Well, our latest drought report coming out showing a little bit of change in parts of western Colorado, and unfortunately, it's not for the better. Now, right now, most of our state, about 80% of our state, is in some form of drought, taking you up into parts of northern Colorado, dealing with a little bit of abnormally dry, moderate, and even seeing some more severe drought start to creep in. We're not seeing a ton of change close to the Denver area or up into northern Colorado. Where we're seeing our greatest change is going to be in the west and specifically the southwest. Our areas of extreme drought getting a little bit larger, also our severe drought becoming a little bit more widespread. So unfortunately, the change that we've seen this week as compared to last, drought conditions across the state getting a little bit worse. Now we have more wet weather moving in for the weekend, so we'll keep our eye on how that shapes up. Any wet weather is good wet weather, so we're of course going to continue to track that. But latest drought monitor shows that about 80% of the state is in some form of drought as of now. Now, recently, First Alert meteorologist Callie Zanandri spoke with the CSU climatologist to tell us what this drought monitor is all about.
I'm your First Alert meteorologist, Callie Zanandri. This week, we are talking about how spring storms and May heat are impacting drought conditions across Colorado. Joining me is Colorado State climatologist Rush Schumacher of Colorado State University. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now let's kick this off with what is the drought monitor and what goes into that?
Yeah, so the U.S. Drought Monitor is this big collaborative effort between states and the federal government and others to try and depict what the status of drought is each week. It gets updated each week, and taking into account all different kinds of data, of course, precipitation, where it's been raining and snowing or not, soil moisture, snowpack this time of year, and on, a lot of different data sources, and also impacts reports about how the drought is affecting people in different areas. And it's trying to represent all of that in a single map. So there's, short-term meteorological drought that is that usually affects agriculture and vegetation, all the way out to the long-term droughts that we've seen reducing stream flows on the Colorado River, and trying to take account of all of that and get it onto one map that people can look at and get a quick picture of where the drought is the worst and how it's changing over time.
Now, with the recent storms, Colorado saw some big rainfall totals. How much did that have an impact on drought conditions?
Yeah, so southeastern Colorado, especially like the Arkansas River Basin, had big rain last week at the lower elevations, and then a lot of snow up at the highest elevation. So a lot of places in southeast Colorado saw 1.5 inches, 2 inches of rain, and then up to a few feet of snow, like up on Pikes Peak. And so that was the big boost for the moisture in that part of the state. And so, looking at the drought monitor this week, the drought conditions are much improved in that part of the state where they saw these big rain amounts. But it was, that part of southeastern Colorado and then parts of the Front Range that saw the beneficial precipitation from that storm, but then other parts of the state did not do so well with that one.
Yeah, despite the moisture, much of the state is still struggling, like you mentioned. Can you explain why the western and northern parts of Colorado didn't see the same improvements?
Yeah, that particular storm last week was most like the low pressure system that led to that storm was a bit down to our south. So southern Colorado and into New Mexico got a lot of moisture from that, and then the winds were out of the east, so the upslope flow towards the Front Range here that produced the heavier snow there. But on the western slope, the storm track was basically too far south to give them a whole lot of precip, and especially like northwestern Colorado didn't really get much of any precipitation from that storm. So those areas are, if we look, say, up in northwestern Colorado, say the Park Range near Steamboat Springs, their peak snowpack in that region and the snow through the winter was actually not too bad, a little bit below average. But now over the last month and a half or so, it's been extremely dry up there, up until yesterday where they got a little bit of rain and snow in that region. But that's on average, one of the wettest times of the year for the lower elevations in western Colorado and especially northwestern Colorado. And instead, they had one of their driest Aprils on record and leading into dry conditions through the first part of May.
Now, at the moment, Colorado's snowpack is about half of what it should be, and we're seeing melting much faster than normal. How unusual is that for this time of year, and what are the implications?
Yeah, so that is not a good sign when we have the snow melting out that early in the spring. So again, like the northern mountains, the peak snowpack that they had in April, building up to April, early April, was not too bad. It was a little, not too far off of average. Southern Colorado didn't get the snow at all really this winter, so the snowpack never even reached a good status in that part of the state. And then all these warm sunny days in April and early May have led to rapid melt off kind of everywhere in the state. And one of the reasons that isn't good is that it's about the timing of the runoff into the streams and rivers. So again, the up in the Colorado River headwaters, the stream flow is looking like it'll probably be okay, but it'll be early. And if you're, imagine you're a farmer on the western slope in Colorado that has to irrigate crops to grow. When do you need that water? Well, you need it in the really hot and dry part of the summer, late June through July and August. So that's kind of the typical time for the rivers to be at their peak is like through June. But if you shift that, weeks or a month earlier, that's not really when you need the water to be available. And so if you don't have storage in a reservoir, like if you don't have access to reservoir water, having the rivers run high in May is not actually as helpful as having them run high in June and July. And so that shift towards the earlier runoff. So the runoff will be lower almost everywhere this year, and it'll be earlier. And that's not a great combination for, making the most use out of that water.
Now, looking ahead, NOAA's outlook for June is hot and dry. How concerned should we be about increasing wildfire risk in the weeks ahead?
Yeah, seeing the red for above average temperature and the brown for below average precipitation through June is somewhat concerning in that we know that the snowpack's going to be melted out early. It was lower than average to begin with in most areas. So stuff's going to dry out, especially the further south and west in the state you go. And past years where the snowpack's been not good, like it has been the case this year. Some of those years like 2002, 2012, 2018, this year isn't quite as bad as those years, but it's in the same conversation. And those were all years that had a lot of wildfires. And June tends to be the peak of the summer wildfire season in western Colorado, because on average it tends to dry out from about this point through the end of June before the summer monsoon comes in. So hotter than average temperatures and below average precipitation will certainly raise the concerns about wildfire risk as we get later into June.
Well, thank you so much for all of the information, Russ, and we will see you back here next week for your First Alert Drought Report.